thrill me.
I'm gonna name you Kodo. You get a name too, Podo.
I got good news and bad news, girls. The good news is your dates are here.
What's the bad news?
They're dead.
You too? You got a boner too? Blue Steel.
Welcome, everybody, to another installment of the Unkind Rewind. As always, I'm Josh Dugan, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sean McGrath. How are things, Sean?
Things are good. I am post-SAG nominating committee duties. I can tell you what I voted for. It didn't matter, apparently. But, I mean, there was a little bit of crossover, but I think in terms of Best Actor, for example, I only had one crossover, and that was Ralph Fiennes in Conclave. Everything else, nope, nobody listened to me. But
with the nominating committee, is there like a meeting that you're going to? Are you like lobbying for these, or is this just you're submitting it to like a central database? I
submitted my ballot to the central database, say 3 or 4 days before the SAG nominations were announced.
Uh-huh.
So basically they counted up and we got the top 5, and that's what we're recording this before the SAG awards. But out of those 5 nominees, there were 100 to 120 maybe up for consideration. I did find out some kind of strange things, is that there were movies that some people would know about, like the Annie Baker film Janet Planet with Julianne Nicholson. Is that her name?
Yeah.
They just didn't submit, which is insane, but like they chose not to submit for consideration. And obviously there's a lot of money that goes into that kind of campaign,
right.
But
now I know Mark Maron for To Leslie was upset with whoever was supposed to be nominating things because like they hadn't pushed him at all for nominations for, I think it was maybe SAG, and I think it was Independent Spirit also. Although maybe he was nominated for Independent Spirit and I'm misremembering. But like I know that someone had kind of bungled the submission. Like obviously Riseborough had been nominated.
Yeah.
But like they hadn't submitted him, which seemed odd because he is the kind of clear second person who you would at least be submitting for.
Yeah, unfortunately there's a lot that goes into just how visible a movie is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with the awards situation, like I thought Michael Pitt gave a really good performance in Day of the Fight. Nobody saw that movie.
Yeah.
Nobody's even heard of that movie.
Right. I mean, I've only heard of it because of you.
Yeah. Jack Huston, son of Angelica, wrote and directed a small kind of single day movie about a boxer kind of coming off of a long layoff to do one fight.
Okay.
I just thought, the movie's okay, but Michael Pitt, I just think was tremendous in that. I don't think people know that Michael Pitt is alive still. Like that's how in the dark that movie is. So was I throwing a vote away on that? Probably not. But yeah, I didn't see a lot of overlap with what I loved from this year versus what the 5 nominees ended up being. But that's okay. Whatever. I didn't expect.
You probably saw a lot more than most of the nominating committee did too.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like you can only see so much. There's still a lot of movies that I want to see from last year.
Yeah. But a lot of that stuff wasn't SAG eligible, right?
A lot of that stuff
like
wasn't.
Foreign stuff isn't.
Well, no, because I submitted.
Doesn't SAG have to be co-produced by a U.S. studio?
I think they can be SAG actors. There are a lot of SAG actors who are foreign. Fernando Torres, for example.
Yeah.
In I'm Still Here or something like that. I think that's the name of the movie. Walter Sales movie.
Yeah.
She got my vote. She actually ended up winning the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Drama. Didn't receive a nomination from SAG. So I think that is less that it was eligible and more that just a bunch of people in the guild couldn't be bothered to get to that. So it's whatever. I'm sure we'll talk about awards kind of as we go on. But how about you? You said you're always Josh Dugan. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
100% of the time.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah.
You know who you are.
I know who I am.
You haven't seen anything of great renown of late?
Well, I went to Paris, Texas, was playing at a theater in town here.
What theater was it at?
It was at Grandview.
Oh, great.
Which we saw Human Nature at.
Okay. Yep. 2 screen or 1 screen?
Yeah,
theater?
it was the upstairs screen.
Okay.
With the same one we saw Human Nature at.
Yeah. I need to
Jesus
see that
Christ.
again.
Isn't it shocking that I fucking remember that I saw Human Nature at that theater with you?
I mean, it's certainly familiar. I don't think I would have been able to recall it like the way that you did, but...
Yeah. The Charlie Kaufman scripted, Michel Gondry, I believe, was the director. Rhys Ifans.
03?
Star Vehicle? Earlier.
Really? Wow, okay.
Yeah, that was... We were still in college.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. I mean, I do have some kind of connections, some correlations to the movie and the theater and probably who I was with, but I don't think I could do it with 100% accuracy.
U.S. release date, April 2002. We were out of college, I guess. But yeah, we
Okay.
saw it there.
Anyway, Paris, Texas is pretty great. It's better than Human Nature.
Yeah, Paris, Texas is fantastic.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it in a very long time. I talked about this on Substack, but I hadn't seen it in a long time, and it's really fantastic.
If there are people out there who haven't seen it, would you say see it now, or would you say try and wait and catch it in a theater?
Like, this was only playing at that screen because it was part of like a fucking loneliness series that they're doing in January. They do like a Thursday night and a Sunday night screening at the late screening.
Okay.
So, like, Yi Yi is playing in that series. I can't remember what the other 2 films are, but
It might be better just to see it.
I would just watch it.
Yeah.
If you have a good enough TV, just watch it on Max or Criterion. Don't try to wait for it on a big screen. You can always see it again. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. This, of course, being one of your 4 favorites on Letterboxd.
I would say above even that, 4 favorites on Letterboxd. It's a movie that when I saw it, just hit every kind of emotional chord in me.
Because it's heartbreaking, but it's also funny. Like, the first 20 minutes is really offbeat in a way that you're not expecting. I mean, Harry Dean Stanton has a lot of screen time and doesn't utter a word until maybe the 20-minute mark.
Yeah. It's really hard to describe this movie and like...
Like, you look at all of the talent behind the camera that is working on this movie. It's a Sam Shepard script. It's obviously Wim Wenders directing. The cinematographer is Robbie Mueller, who is legendary.
Mm-hmm.
It's set in like mostly in West Texas and then in LA, but in the valley where they're not normally shooting. And it's kind of like, I can't tell if it's like La Cañada, Flint Ridge or wherever, but it's like North Valley overlooking the Burbank Airport, which that's not the part of LA that people shoot in. And then it's in like East Texas, but it's all like, it's shot so beautifully. Harry Dean Stanton and Nastasha Kinski are fucking incredible. The assistant director is Claire Denis. Allison Anders is a fucking PA on it.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of crazy how many people worked on this. And then the Riot Cooter score is fantastic, too. It's just this amalgamation of all of these, like, brilliant people working together.
And they're working together on a movie that, like, feels so patient and effortless that to be able to kind of pull off something like that. This is a very tender, slow, considerate movie that just knows... Wenders just kind of knew.
It's so fucking confident.
Yeah.
Let all of the, like, so many scenes are let to breathe, but that routinely can be a problem for me. Like with, say, Blade Runner 2049. I did not like Blade Runner 2049, and I feel like a lot of the scenes had a lot of fat to cut. I don't feel like that with Paris, Texas.
Yeah, it's not a movie for everybody, thank God. They don't make any fucking concessions.
No.
Yeah, you put it perfectly. It's a very confident film, but like just that measured, cool, like we know what we're doing. Like just everybody back off. We're working on it. And luckily I've been able to kind of see it at a few theaters in the last 5 years, but I still have this preciousness associated with it where like I don't want to do that too much. Like I'm happy kind of stepping away for 5 or 10 years right at this moment.
I hadn't seen it in like 20 years and holy shit, like I'd forgotten enough of the movie. I really just kind of remembered where the end is set, and then like I remembered him going around with his kid, but that was most of my memory of the movie. And so like to go in with kind of fresh eyes was a pretty transcendent experience. And that being in a theater with very uncomfortable seats where my leg was cramping for a long time
Yeah.
Like, Jackie was kind of miserable sitting there, but like the movie was still fucking great in spite of sitting there uncomfortable for.
In a weird way, like this is not a movie for like stadium seating with a reclining chair and a
Right.
This is kind of a grittier experience all the way around. Like I think the last time I saw it was in the film forum,
which are presumably not great.
Yeah, that's not what you go there for.
So we got quite a bit of pod business to cover because we recorded the last sort of, I call it a pre in my file naming system.
Sure, however you want to call it.
The sort of discussion section before the Q's and T's with our guest. We recorded that before anyone had been able to listen to the Cloak and Dagger episode. So we have like 2 episodes worth of stuff to cover. Now, I should mention Karen talked about being on the pod in the Chicklet app they dropped just before Christmas. That one was called Where the Hell Have You Been, Loca? A Christmas Bitch Session. So yeah, fun to get a mention there. And that anyone can listen to. They're not talking about the second Twilight book
and they're not talking about the Tuck Everlasting source material?
They do talk about Tuck Everlasting a bit, but not the source material.
Okay.
Now, from an older ep, Nick Hartle had reached out to Sean and said, I had a chance to listen to your podcast. I'm a big Cocoon head. I had imported the German Blu-ray since the Fox one is $100.
Jesus. Yeah, Nick is a big physical media guy. Like, still one of those ones who's out there like doing the Lord's work, collecting fucking tangible movies that you can hold in your hand, and you're not beholden to whatever streaming service wants to play whenever. But a lot of the companies that put out physical media like really won't show up in American store shelves.
Yeah. Like
you have to be resourceful. You kind of have to do some sleuthing
right.
to get this stuff. But it's funny though with Cocoon though, because we talked about, a big part of that podcast was talking about the endangered species that was Cocoon on physical media.
Well, it was big on VHS, but like DVD release sold so badly initially that like they just never pressed more. So like if you were looking for Cocoon post 1996 or so, good fucking luck.
Yeah, you'd be paying out your ass on eBay.
Now, speaking of physical media, we talked a little bit about I Love Video in the last... Oh, never mind. The last 2 that Sean and I recorded.
I Love Video in Austin, the video store, has been talked about on this podcast, we'll just say.
Yeah, Sean and I just recorded the second episode of season 3. But we had talked about I Love Video, and I Love Video was a place where I was able to rent for free because of where I worked. A sister store with that.
Did you abuse that policy?
Oh, yeah. My late fees were not as bad as Adam's, but I owed over $600 in late fees.
Wow.
But I never had to pay them. But at a certain point, like, I didn't know everyone who was working there, and I would have had to pay some late fees to rent. So at a certain point, I stopped going.
They let you rent for free, but you could incur late fees.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, speaking to this, Adam had, I think it was $1,600 in late fees.
Is that why he left Texas?
Yeah. The owner of I Love had to have 10 accounts because on their arcane system, once you got over $10,000 in late fees, you couldn't rent anymore. So he had 10 accounts. He had accrued over $100,000 in late fees.
Well, it's nice that they let him just...
It was his store though, so whatever.
Yeah. He just has passports like Jason Bourne. He just goes in there with a new identity.
Now, I Love Video closed, unfortunately, but when it closed, it apparently may have had the largest private video collection in the world because it had, at one point, I believe there were 5 or 6 stores, and those all got consolidated into one big store. And that big store had an estimated 120,000 videos.
120,000 copies?
Well, they weren't getting like a fuck ton of new releases or anything. Like they were more like focused on having arcane titles and shit like that.
So 10,000 of those were probably...
This was much more Movie Madness cut out, you know, like they had like all those, was it 7 Minutes to Live or whatever? Those weird bootleg shit. They had was it 8-hour cut of Apocalypse Now?
Yeah, I don't know if this was the same thing with I Love Video, but like Movie Madness in Portland, I think you had to put up a deposit for certain copies that they had. So if you wanted to rent something that like, Buster Keaton's snuff film from 1923.
Like bootleg stuff or like Asian import stuff that they had like burned to all region or something like that. That was definitely what I Love was doing also.
Yeah, I didn't really explore too much of that stuff. I probably should have back when I was there, but it's still there. And I'm sure that they still have a lot of that stuff. I mean, they're one of the only video stores probably in the United States that's turning somewhat of a profit.
Yeah. I mean, I Love was like still struggling by until
China killed it.
China killed it. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, speaking to Cloak and Dagger, which we did a couple weeks back with Mike Wiebe, who also used to get free rentals at I Love Video.
Everybody but me, apparently.
Well, anyone who worked at Spiderhouse did.
What I'm saying is I'm the only one that we're talking about that hasn't worked at Spiderhouse.
Yeah. Stuart did, who was our guest in the season 3 episode that we just recorded and has a video shelf from there. But
okay, but I knew people who worked at Spiderhouse, so maybe I would have been able to get some freebies.
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on.
But friend of the pod, Carlos Cantu, commented about Cloak and Dagger. Just getting around to this, but great episode, guys. I hadn't seen Cloak and Dagger in at least 38 years. What a trip to see San Antonio back then, especially Sunken Gardens. Saw Rage Against the Machine with GVSB there in fall of 96. Cheers, y'all. He also added that he watched it for that Alamo interior shot and that tour guide's whack-ass revisionist version of Texas history she's spewing in the background.
Was that really the interior for the Alamo?
No, they couldn't shoot there.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say.
Then he added via DM on Instagram that he saw Riverboat Gamblers a bunch when he was still living in Austin, and he saw them play the last show at Emo's on 6th, which was about 2011. So it was awesome. It was so awesome is what he's saying about the Riverboat Gamblers show.
Oh, right on.
Now, on Blue Sky, Gopher Ball said, everyone gets one more present listening to the Unkind Rewind podcast take on the only movie with the snowballs to cast Dabney Coleman as a super spy imaginary friend. The Atari 5200 Discourse is a bonus stocking stuffer. So that was obviously on Christmas. But we had recorded before that. So
since we recorded that, I went back and watched like somebody play through the Cloak and Dagger Atari game, which they have released into the public. Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's a Tourette's syndrome nightmare.
Okay. I followed up by asking if he was lucky enough to have had one of the half dozen 5200s out there. And he replied, no, but I coveted one after reading about them in a magazine. I only saw them in stores once, maybe? JCPenney? But the price was prohibitive. And then they and other home systems were gone.
Yeah, that was a sign of a rich kid. Also, I'm
right.
confusing Tourette's syndrome with being an epileptic. So I should probably make that correction now rather than on the next podcast.
Way different.
Way different. Boy, it would suck. It would suck to have both, but
yeah.
What a blast to be friends with that person.
Yeah. Now getting to the lost world of it all.
Josh's favorite movie.
Yep. After dropping the Q's and T's episode with Summer, Gopher Ball said, saw this in the theater once and immediately forgot it. A quintessential paycheck movie. Is this the one with sleepwalking Vince Vaughn? And does it play a guy getting shredded in half for laughs? They came up with the first scene and the last rampage as cool ideas and then half-assed the rest. And then when he quote tweeted the main event post, he said, I went to watch Lost World, but watched One Crazy Summer instead. Sounds like I made the right call. Lost World is such a bummer because Jurassic Park is one of Spielberg's best and might have been the best if he had cut out the annoying kids. The Laundry said it's also a bummer because Michael Crichton wrote the Lost World novel, though not the screenplay, after the book and movie became such a hit that the IP/money machine had to be fed, but not because he organically had a great idea for a sequel, to which I had to add, as you'll find out on the pod, the novel was entirely ignored for the film, which was an even more shameless cash grab than the novel was. And then, after the Laundry listened, he said, just listen to and your indignation was as palpable as I'd hoped going in. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a bummer too because they do stick from, I think certain people die differently in the book, but like the movie that we got in 1993, the original, is the book. Like there's certainly a lot more to it because, you know, it's a fucking novel that's 400 to 500 pages. I think Hammond actually dies in the book, if I'm remembering correctly. Richard Attenborough's character. But like, why not just do the fucking sequel? Why not just adapt what Michael Crichton has shown you works.
Yeah.
And come what may. And they had to do this strange deviation. Of course, it didn't work.
Right.
But
where Spielberg was just like, no, I want to base it on The Lost World, the movie from 1926 that no one fucking saw and no one has an affinity for. And Hatari or whatever the fuck it was.
It's a really frustrating movie because it doesn't have any like innate weaknesses behind how, like, strength-wise, if you're just looking on paper, like, it should be good. It doesn't have to be great, but it should be watchable.
It's not.
Like, they have a blank check, basically, to do this. Most of it goes to promoting the movie,
Yeah.
but there's really not a lot of budget constraints on the sequel to Jurassic Park. And yet, what they gave us
is so thoroughly half-assed.
Yeah, it's not any better than a movie that has a $5 million budget.
Yeah. Now, Adam on Blue Sky complained, this is, of course, Adam Schwitters, complained about The Lost World being hard to stream now because on January 1st, it appears to have left Peacock and Max, where it had been for at least the 6 months prior, if not a full year. It's only on Stars right now, apparently, which Adam ended up signing up for on a free trial to add Jurassic Park movies to Max's Jurassic Park cinematic universe while not doing the Jurassic World flicks. He apparently wants his son to avoid Chris Pratt movies. After watching it, Adam said, "The 1 week free sub worked, and I have to say that while Vince Vaughn plays a terrible cameraman, Carl Hungus is the ideal evil henchman."
Yeah. Peter Stormare's, you don't do yourself any disservice by casting Peter Stormare.
Right.
He can't save that movie, though, Adam.
No. And he doesn't. Now, on the Fuck My Work Life Discord, Leo Allen said, isn't this the one that Dr. Grant was referring to later when he sarcastically said, "I had nothing to do with that"?
Yeah.
Which is funny. DT from Space Castle said Lost World is a strange animal. In some ways it's meaner than the original. In other ways it's sillier and goofier. So weird that in the same movie we get a dude ripped in half on screen by dinosaurs as a reward for being a hero, and then a girl defeating a raptor by doing a shitty uneven bars routine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad they pointed it out because Schiff was like a decent guy and he gets a really awful death in this movie.
Yeah.
Which is normally kind of Spielbergian. The opposite is that you establish shitheel characters and then you kill them awfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Leo also added that one flaw that I feel all of them have is the "and here comes the T-Rex" grand finale, which is a fair criticism. Every fucking movie basically ends like that. And then he said great episodes as usual. Summer being high was the icing on the cake. And I obviously added, thanks. I, unfortunately, was not high.
I think Summer was not high for the recording of the podcast, thank God.
No, Summer was high for the recording of the podcast, definitely.
Oh, I thought Summer
100%.
was high for the viewing of...
No. Summer was high for the recording.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, she said, yeah.
Loquacious Summer.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway, I mean, that's kind of all the business. As always, you can call into our call-in line, which is...
And we'll just kind of remind listeners that maybe because this is a little bit of a new format, like we're still early in this kind of formatting, that this guest did not know the movie that we selected.
Right. Yes, the one coming up. But yeah, if you have any feedback, call in 507-479-6440. That's obviously a United States phone number. Again, 507-479-6440. It's in the show notes as well. You can call in, you can email, you can respond to us on social medias, though I almost never check Twitter at this point, so don't do it there. Now, as for the movie that we're throwing to here, the discussion, we will be talking with a friend of the pod, Ted Douglas, one of Sean's old buds. This is a fun one.
Yeah. God, this movie's only kind of sat around with me specifically, like obviously with the fare that we're talking about, there's problematic stuff.
Oh, you think?
But this specifically has a scene that I think has lingered longest with me along that realm.
The problematic thing? Yeah.
In terms of like stuff that our protagonist does.
Right, where you cannot believe that they just did this.
I cannot believe that the protagonist did this. Like the guy that we're supposed to be rooting for.
Yeah, the hero.
The hero. And it's a fun then and now, kind of where we are and where we were then in terms of Jesus Christ, what was deemed as acceptable.
I will say we ended up talking about it off mic after the main event, but I definitely pulled punches when it came to the star. It could have been a lot more disparaging and wasn't.
Yeah.
Not all from like personal experience or anything like that, but not a fan.
I don't think he's done too much in the last, in recent history to kind of win you back either.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're kind of burying the lead here, and you'll know what we're talking about in a second when we start talking with Ted about the movie he grew up with.
God. Ted, you did it to yourself on this one.
Yep.
But yeah, Ted's a huge movie guy, and it's really kind of fun to kind of plumb the depths of his adolescence.
His list was a blast too. Like, there's so
he,
much stuff on the list that I want to cover.
Yeah, he has some great ones.
Like I almost watched. We don't do it, but I almost watched Miracle Mile like this last week.
Yeah, I'm gonna save that one. I have too much non-Unkind Rewind potential stuff to get through, but yeah, maybe down the road. I mean, we want to keep it a surprise too, but yeah, maybe we cook the books a little bit if Ted ever comes back.
Right. Anyway, Ted.
Without further ado, Ted Douglas.
Welcome, everybody, to another Q's and T's installment of The Unkind Rewind. Sean and I are sitting here with Sean's good buddy, Portlander, Ted Douglas.
Hello.
Ted.
Yes, sir.
I guess for the audience who may or may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Everybody knows Ted, Josh.
Oh, yes. So popular on a national scale.
I guess for the one person who doesn't know Ted Douglas,
Yes.
we should been like living on an island in the South Pacific, still fighting the Allied powers.
Yes.
Yep. Godzilla killed the rest of his crew.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So to that one man,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
say
Hi, I'm Ted. I am a husband and a father.
and we didn't ask the tombstone.
I also
Jesus.
I am a sketch comedian. At one point, I was a co-host of a afternoon drive time radio program. I've been on a handful of television programs that have shot here in Portland. I was on 9 episodes of Portlandia. I got the name of regular from Mr. Armisen, which was a big day.
Nice.
The clouds parted. He was like, "Hey, series regular Ted," and I was like, "You don't know my last name, but I'm happy to receive that title."
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple other. I was on an episode of American Vandal. I was on an episode of Leverage, the last episode of Leverage, for approximately 3 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I was on the final episode of Grimm, where I was murdered by the big bad in a bathroom with a
Nice.
spear. He came out of a mirror. He stabbed me through the chest. I got to slide down the wall, the whole thing. It was great.
Sean, on your Grimm, did you do network TV nudity on that?
I did upper torso nudity. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
He was a sweet boy. There was nothing sassy about it.
So both of you were treated with the same ignominious energy by the creators of Grimm.
Yeah, I mean, I was a guy getting off work. I pulled into a gas station.
A gas station bathroom, not
yeah.
even the dignity of your own home.
No, I went in and I went in and
the
they
show
had
is
me.
called Grimm.
That's right. That's right. They had me whistle a specific song while I went in and used the facilities and then washed my hands. And then the mirror shimmers and a demon guy comes out with a spear out of the mirror and stabs me through the heart. Now, the thing that was not great about it was they cut the part of the story that involved the song recurring that I was whistling.
Okay.
So they also muted out me whistling. So I'm just making a weird whistle face as I'm going in there in the bathroom.
Christ. I was going to ask if you had to re-record your whistling ADR as some other song because they didn't have the rights, but...
No, I mean, they could have just left me whistling a song and left the sound in there. Instead, I just look weird.
Fun.
How great would it have been if they had gotten Cam Neely to murder you in a gas station bathroom, reprising his role from Dumb and Dumber as Seabass?
Seabass. Yep.
They couldn't have given you 2 takes, one without the puckered lips of the whistler?
I mean, it aired months after we shot it, so it was probably a decision made in the edit to get rid of that part of the story. I don't think they were going to do a reshoot for guy in bathroom gets killed.
What would have been really funny is, just his character just purses his lips and no sound comes out. Like, that is just who this guy is.
Yeah, that's
well,
like
that's
getting killed.
That's how he pisses. That's how he just walks around gas stations, bobbing his head, no music. I love it.
And then Shawnee and I have done a bit of sketch comedy together. I had a troupe for 20 years, and among some other shows with the Siren Theater in town, we did some staged movie adaptations. The first of which is about to hit a 15-year anniversary, Sean, which is Roadhouse, where Sean played Dalton.
Ted was my Brad Wesley, so Ted was
nice.
my Ben Gazzara. Yeah. Fought each other in the finale on show nights.
We sure did.
How do you guys feel as to Roadhousers about the Roadhouse remake?
Have you seen it, Sean?
I haven't seen it.
I genuinely enjoyed it.
Okay. I mean, I figured it was inevitable. I'm glad it was done with Gyllenhaal and not with Ronda Rousey, MMA champion. At one point they were talking about her, but
yeah, it was what I liked was the decision to not really do anything close to the original.
Right. Yeah.
They did their own thing with it. Dalton is a real weirdo, which is delightful for Jake Gyllenhaal to play. Yeah. And then I'm blanking on his name. Who's the bad guy who comes in? Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is batshit insane and a delight.
He is wildly coked up.
Yes. And so it's
like
it
not
is
the character, the actor.
It has the spirit of the original movie, but plot wise it's quite different.
Yes.
But I enjoyed it.
And the original movie, I mean, it's
perfect.
It's directed by a guy named Rowdy. So
yes.
Says everything you need to know about it. I mean, it's a place in both of our hearts, certainly the movie and the show for Ted and I.
Yeah. Now, Josh, I'll tell you a fun story about Shawnee during one of the runs. We did 3 runs in pretty quick succession because it was an immediate giant hit locally. Mm-hmm. And we got a chance to do one in a big theater here, the Armory. And the stage was quite wide and it was a 3/4 thrust.
I feel like I know where this is going.
There's a scene where Dalton gets out of bed in the morning. And his ass is out. And Sean, playing Dalton with beautiful stoicism, did as much of the stuff from the movie as he could, including getting out of bed with his ass out. Well, we noticed that up in the corner, against the far wall closest to the stage, but up in the corner, there would be a group of young women who would gather there for every show. And it took us a minute to realize, because nobody else is on stage with Sean when he's doing that, to realize why they were doing it. And it was because they were getting a glimpse of the other side when he stepped out of bed.
They were getting the full Shawnee.
They were getting the full Shawnee.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wasn't one of your exes there, Sean, in that spot?
I mean, ex-girlfriends came to the show. I don't know if they came to that seat. I don't know why they would need to see it again.
They've already.
I thought there was a story of one of your exes with a date.
Yeah,
and they were accidentally in the splash zone.
The splash zone.
I think it was less about that angle and more just about the full caboose.
Sure.
But yeah, I had an ex-girlfriend who brought her current boyfriend to the show, which was the very first time I had met him.
Okay.
And from that point forward, he was not an endorser of our friendship.
Yeah.
He had high suspicions every time she met me for a cup of coffee. Or
Fair enough.
Yeah. It was
Sure.
just
He thinks you're a naturist. He thinks you're a nudist. So
it was just a very bad first meeting, I guess,
Right.
to show off.
My ex is super cool. You'll love him.
Yeah.
All of him. Yeah.
And that's his ass.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an experience. It was an accidental experience. I was doing a sketch comedy show where, it was, took place, in the 1800s, and it was, about werewomen, about men by the light of the full moon. They'd been bitten by a cursed woman and, would turn into a woman or, turn a woman during the day. And at night they would turn back into a man. That's what it was. So in the sketch, I'm wearing a dress and a big crazy wig and all that. And I'm acting like a monster. And then at some point in it, lightning crashes, whatever. And I duck back behind a table, strip everything off and stand up with just my hand over my junk and back out of the room. Well, I would do that under a table. And one night, my radio co-host, Daria, and her husband, Dallas, they were there and they were sitting in the front row. And this is another like thrust stage situation. And whoever had set the tablecloth did not get it all the way over one end. So while I was just crouched down and pulling this dress off of me, which was a struggle because I'm sweaty and all that stuff. And they got the full fruit salad out the back. I did not know this.
You want that from either?
No, I was not aware of this until we got back on the air. She saved it for air the following Monday to let me know in front of our audience that,
I mean, you got to do it for the audience,
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And because it was radio, she had to be very descriptive.
I don't think she wanted to think about it much. I think she just wanted to say, here's what we saw. The end. Yeah. Yeah.
So, since this is also about the past, tell us a bit about your childhood, Ted.
Oh, I grew up, I was born in Northridge, California, just outside of Los Angeles. And at 3 years old, my family moved to Salem, Oregon. And then at 6, we moved to Beaverton, which is just outside of Portland. And that's where I grew up. And I have, except for a ill-advised 1 year during college where I moved back down to LA to get residency to go to UCLA film school. By the time that year was up, I hated it so much I came back. I've lived here my entire life. So I went to University of Oregon and Portland State, and then had the sketch group, the third floor, right out of college, and did that for 20 years.
So as a kid, though, you mostly associate growing up in Oregon. You don't really cling to the 3 years of Cali.
No, not at all. I mean, I would go down sometimes during summers and spend like a month hanging out with my cousins. Okay. But for the most part, no, suburban Portland area kid.
Were your cousins also like North San Fernando Valley, or were they elsewhere in California?
No, the whole family is right in that area. Van Nuys, Reseda, Northridge. Yeah.
So when you moved to Oregon, you just had your family and was it one brother?
I have one brother. My mom and dad were always together until my dad passed away in the mid-aughts. And then my mom moved back down to LA. But yeah, my childhood was all just kind of sweet 80s Amblin suburbia and very, very, very movie heavy. My dad was a gigantic movie buff, and that was sort of our love language. That's what we did. We rented every movie there was to rent. He rented even more, and then would occasionally say like, hey, I just saw this movie, A Nightmare on Elm Street. You would sit down right now when I come home from school, sit down, watch it. I have homework. You can do it later. Sit down and watch this. Evil Dead 2.
It was age inappropriate fare like Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm assuming you were maybe young to see it.
Yeah, I was born in 72. So when all this stuff started coming out, I was,
you were
it was, I was like 10. I was like 10, 12, I saw a lot of stuff before I should have probably, but that's also how I'm raising my kids. I show them everything and they love it.
Josh, as our historian here, when did we start seeing the spike of VHS rentals?
The video stores would have been opening early, like very seldomly in like 80 or so, and then by 83, 84, you're starting to see him pretty
So a
predominant.
hard diet, Ted, of movies thereafter. And before that, were you going to the movies? Were you going to the theater with your dad or your brother? Were you just
all
seeing
the
stuff
time,
on TV?
all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, no, we went to the movies. We watched stuff on TV. Watched stuff on cable. We were early cable adopters.
Did you have HBO early on?
Oh, early. Yeah,
Okay.
very early. So because of HBO, I saw many, many movies 1 million times.
Sure.
Because that's just what was on. We were latchkey kids, so we'd come home, watch MTV and whatever was on HBO, and that was it. And then once they started, pricing VHS tapes for purchase, my dad started buying up tons of them, and we had quite a library.
In 1988.
yes. And I actually think it was early, but I think the first one I remember being priced to buy was Beverly Hills Cop. I think that was
84?
like 85. I think it came
But
out in
it was
84, but I
still
think on
like
video
a
it was like
solid
85.
year where they were only
Yes.
priced to rent.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yeah. It would be a little bit. And then at some point Star Wars hit, and that was that. But speaking of Star Wars, in Beaverton, Oregon, was the Westgate Theater, which was to this day still the biggest screen that I've ever seen, bigger than any IMAX. It was an old school, ginormous screen, and it had the record for playing Star Wars the longest. It played it for a full year.
Nice.
And we saw it there. So we moved here when that was already playing there. And I remember seeing there probably 10 times. We went and saw that constantly. Almost all of the big movies of the 80s we saw opening weekend in the theater.
So we haven't told you what movie we chose from your list.
No.
You're patient zero
All right.
for this change.
It was a great
I'm
list.
excited.
Great list, too. But
Yeah, really fun list.
Thank you.
I was sort of pushing for My Bodyguard because I love that fucking movie so much, and I was sort of pushing for The Stepfather.
Those are two favorites. And The Bodyguard, or My Bodyguard, I mean, is when I say that I watched movies 1 million times on HBO, that's the first one that comes to mind. They played that on a loop.
We didn't choose either of those, though.
Stepfather
All
was
right.
close.
Yeah.
That was the one I was kind of pushing hard for because of Terry O'Quinn.
Yeah. Who am I here?
Yeah.
We're big TOQ fans here.
Yeah, big time.
I mean, how can you not be?
I really am. He's so good in Patriot. Anyway, the movie we did choose from your list
Well, Ted,
is Dreamscape from 1984.
Holy shit. Well, all right.
which is, I guess, to the people who know what Dreamscape is, probably had the same reaction Ted just did.
Yeah. That one, huh? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
Ted, memory can be a tricky thing.
It sure can.
Yeah, having not rewatched Dreamscape in ages, can you briefly describe what you remember the basic plot of the film being?
Yeah, just whatever comes to mind.
I do not remember why they go about creating the technology to enter someone's dreams, but I remember that they do. I remember that it's Dennis Quaid, and he goes in there. He begins to encounter, like, I believe, nightmare scenarios from other people's dreams. And the main villain in it is a snake man who terrified me as a child.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah. And then I believe, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, but I believe the snake man ends up being, oh God, I'm blanking on his name. He was a bad guy in The Crow. He was one of the bad guys in Commando that Schwarzenegger drops off the cliff.
Is he from the Warriors? He's
from the Warriors. Yes.
Okay, that's David Patrick Kelly.
David Patrick Kelly. That's it. Yeah. I believe he is. It might be that he's revealed to be the bad guy, but as soon as you see him on screen, you know he's the bad guy.
You assume.
Yeah. I remember that I saw it at the Valley Theater here in town, which was a theater that if a movie opened at the Valley Theater, you knew it wasn't great.
Nice.
The kiss of death of the Valley Theater.
The Valley Theater. Like, I remember when Superman 4 came out and it opened at the Valley, we were like, oh no.
It's that bad?
Yeah. Yeah. I saw Ice Pirates there. I saw.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. I saw Action Jackson there.
Action Jackson's a legitimately great film, but
It's like
that
a
was
movie-
almost on the list.
yeah.
a movie that like is originally slated for like a Thanksgiving release, and then you find out it's been pushed to like
January.
February. Yeah, February
Exactly.
26.
Yeah, January is a big month for the Valley Theater.
Oh.
And if it came from Canon Studios, it's just there.
Yeah.
It goes right to the Valley.
So Dennis Quaid, a few years before he is going into being shrunk down and going into people's bodies
Yes, it was around the time of Jaws 3D.
in inner space, he is
Also
going,
a Valley Theater.
he is going. You know, you want that T-shirt, Ted.
I would love
rock a Valley Theater T-shirt. So Dennis Quaid goes into people's dreams because why?
That I honestly do not remember why he is doing. I don't remember if he's like a scientist. I don't, because I'm afraid that I'm going to start getting stuff mixed up with Inner Space, which I did see again just recently and holds up. Oh my God, that movie rules. I can't remember why it is. And I think the woman in it is Kate Capshaw? Maybe?
Okay.
Is it? I don't know.
We'll see.
Yeah. I don't
I'm
remember who
looking
the
at
female
cast
lead
list
is.
right now.
Okay. Yeah, we don't want to reveal yet.
No, it's fine. I mean, I can. It is. I'll
Okay,
assuage,
yay!
I'll assuage your
I got it
concerns
right.
that your memory is failing you. You got that right, and Dennis Quaid is the star. So
Yes, and David Patrick Kelly is in it.
And Ted, what was the weather like that day you saw it?
Well, it was probably pretty cold, given that it was January.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't remember when it came out.
It was probably rainy.
It was probably rainy. It was
it's
Oregon. Yes.
All right. We're just seeing if Ted has the movie autism here.
So you saw this theatrically.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you also then saw it. I can't imagine it wasn't also in sort of the perpetual rotation of.
We rented it, and then it was on cable a million times. But I remember like coming out of it being pretty jazzed about it, just because it was such an out there science fiction concept, and the special effects were relatively cool for the time. I don't remember them being good, but I remember them being interesting.
Right. Okay.
If that makes sense.
I mean, interesting is probably better than good or cool, you know?
I remember a lot of like clunky green screen, and like there at some point, I believe David Patrick Kelly turns into the Snake Man.
Okay.
And so that was probably like claymation or some sort of weird stop motion something or other. But this was also around the time when, it was post-Tron, so a little bit of computer animated stuff was starting to come in, so there may be a little bit of that in there. I think of like the CG tunnel going into the weird science creative area, or going into Tron world, actually. The same sort of thing. So probably a little bit of that in there. I remember it having sort of the same, the same sort of look and feel as that terrible Spawn movie that came out.
All right.
Spawn was stealing from.
Yeah, it honestly wouldn't. Well, I know Spawn was directed by a longtime special effects guru.
Okay.
It wouldn't surprise me. I have no idea about this, but it wouldn't surprise me if that guy had something to do with Dreamscape.
Okay.
And these are at least a decade apart, right?
Yeah, probably something like that.
Spawn was what, 96 or 7?
Yeah. But hey, get excited, because Todd McFarlane recently announced King Spawn is coming. King Spawn.
Finally.
He's directing it. It's going to be great.
Hold for laughs.
So, how old were you when this was a fixture of your youth? Like, what do you think you were like when this was something you were taking in?
I was, at that point, hard lean into Latchkey Kid.
Okay.
I watched movies constantly. So it would not have been unusual for me to have watched this movie after school on a Tuesday, and then after school on a Thursday, and then maybe the following Sunday, and then shown it to anyone who walked in the house. This was not a movie that was like a favorite of mine, but it was cool to me at the time.
Yeah.
Was there any oversight from the parents about what you could watch and couldn't?
They were not big on like sexy time stuff.
Okay.
Like nudity was okay, but sex, not great.
What's an example that would be something that wouldn't make it past the rental counter? Or that you'd have to quickly change the channel?
It was real hit and miss, because it's hard to remember exactly, because I watched so much that I shouldn't have, that I was not allowed to. So it's hard to remember when I was shut down. I was also shut down for like hardcore gore.
Okay.
Because I remember like Alien, when Alien came out, my parents were like, no, absolutely not. You can't watch Alien when it hit cable probably in like 81, 82. But I snuck out of my room. My parents were watching it and I crawled down the hall. I must have been like 9 or 10, crawled down the hall and planted myself as quiet as possible behind the couch and watched it and was absolutely horrified by the chestburster scene. Did not see that coming. Did not know what this movie was about. Just knew that it was called Alien and I wanted to see it. That happened and I was terrified, but I could not run back to my room because I was also a kid that was afraid of everything. Like any horror movie scared the hell out of me.
And every kid knows that when you do that run back to your room, that's when you're most susceptible.
Yes.
That is the highest
no, it's right
point
behind
of
me.
vulnerability.
Yes.
When they are
100%. That's when the T-Rex can see you.
So was this couch elevated, or were you around the side, looking like underneath
It was a sectional couch that went to the floor. So I was on the short end of the L, looking around the corner at the TV.
Okay.
But I could not make any noise, so I just sat there in my terror. And as the movie went on, I fell asleep, and they found me behind the couch.
So, yeah, I mean, you broke the one rule of spy.
Yeah, you can't fall asleep on a mission.
Yeah, spy work.
No.
Your tradecraft needed some work, I think.
Absolutely.
I love how falling asleep is what, prompted the noise for them to hear a child.
Yeah, I don't think they found me until the movie was over. I think that when they got up to go to bed, they were like...
They probably checked your room and saw that you weren't there. Were like, where the fuck is our child?
It's a quiet movie for a really long part of that, too. So,
yeah.
No one can hear you scream in space, Sean.
No one can hear
no one can hear scream behind the couch.
No one can hear a child muffled screams. I mean, especially when it gets kind of late in the game and that alarm starts blaring. Yeah, they probably wouldn't have noticed anybody, even a noisy sleeper back there.
Yeah, and my dad always had a nice stereo setup and stuff like that. I don't know if it was there yet, but I remember when cable became available to hook up to your hi-fi system that he did all of that. And so it was probably pretty loud in there, just from the music and whatnot.
Was this a movie, though, that your dad had pre-screened, or was this something, that your dad went with you to the movies to originally see at Valley Theater? Or was this something that you would have gone solo?
Oh, no, this would have been with him. At this age, it would have been with him.
Okay.
Eventually, me and my friends started doing the whole ET friends on bikes to everywhere. We would ride. We technically grew up in Aloha, Oregon, which is just outside of Beaverton, Oregon, which is just outside of Portland, Oregon. And we would ride our bikes from Aloha into Beaverton to go to the Westgate, the giant screen, and see whatever was playing there that week. We'd stop by Bob Lamphere Honda and have free hot dogs. Yeah, they had free hot dogs. And then we'd go maybe to Wonderland, which was the Nickel Arcade. Perhaps we'd get in some skating at Skate World.
So you guys had just hacked your whole life.
Yeah, I mean, this was in the day that you hear about with Gen Xers, like when your parents would just say, be home for dinner.
Yeah.
And we would just get up and go in the morning, and that was it. And whoever made it to the meeting spot, which was usually my house because it was the closest to Beaverton, we would just take off from there. If you didn't get us, sometimes a friend might be late and ride all the way into Beaverton, which is miles and miles and miles, and hope to find us at one of those 6 places.
I bet the fucking car salesman loved seeing 6 kids rolling on bikes to eat free hot dogs.
Absolutely.
How many dogs do you think you ate there?
Oh, well, every time we went.
Yeah, but if you were to ballpark the number, the figure.
God, we would always try and get a second one. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. So that comes into play. Doing the math, I mean, probably 50 hot dogs a kid. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we went often.
50 free hot dogs.
We also had Pegasus Books down there, which was our comic book store. And I had a box there and would pick up way too many comic books and uncomfortably ride them home. They'd have to hang off my handlebars, and that would throw the balance off.
So it sounds like Ted was in Stranger Things.
Did you ever buy a car from this dealership?
No.
Oh, man. All of those dogs for naught.
No, but 1,000%. Sean, when Stranger Things came out, I was like, holy shit, they have nailed this. This is... But I was also like, I was the age of the kids when Goonies came out. And that was also a movie that was in the Northwest and was like, well, that's just me and my friends. This is just about me and my friends getting in an adventure. Like that. It's so
Were
cool.
you aware of the Goonies when it was shooting it was mostly in Astoria, right?
It was mostly in Astoria. No, I don't remember hearing about it. I did read like whatever, Premiere Magazine and, whatever movie magazines they had at the Tower Records. I would look at while I was in there. Cinema Fantastique, that sort of thing.
I mean, Astoria is kind of a separate country for people in Portland.
Yeah, that's a drive.
I don't think the chatter wouldn't have come down quite easily when John Astin's kid shows up.
But what about James Brolin's kid?
Yeah.
Believe me, I was made aware of all the, like, that is, I knew who John Astin was. I knew who James Brolin was. I was made aware of all this. In Stand By Me, they were like, that is clearly Donald Sutherland's kid.
So when do you think the last time you saw Dreamscape was?
I like how Josh had to really think about what the hell.
No, because I wanted to say Interspace. Because the names are close too. Like Interspace and Dreamscape are not entirely dissimilar.
What a great drive-in double feature this would be.
Yeah.
It would be. Probably late 80s. Whenever it stopped running regularly on cable. But it's nothing I've ever sought out. I know that I've seen little clips of it, but it's been quite a while since then.
We're talking multiple decades.
Yeah, I have no illusions. This is probably awful.
Yeah.
Okay.
We hope. Or maybe not. Maybe it's going to be shocking.
Maybe not.
Good.
Maybe it's going to be like, holy shit, we've all been sleeping on Dreamscape.
What do you think it was about Dreamscape that appealed to your younger self?
I was also just a gigantic nerd. So it hits a number of sci-fi, fantasy, cool, nerdy kids for a 11, 12-year-old. It was right in the pocket for ooh, this is neat. And then all the special effects, even though the special effects probably look awful now, at the time for them to be doing something as bananas as they do, it's here's what we could do. We're going to represent dreams and all the crazy things. Now we don't think anything of it because CGI can make anything.
Right.
But at the time, if you wanted to make that stuff, they were doing it with cardboard and tape and figuring it out. It's all camera tricks.
At least this is pre-CGI mostly.
Yeah.
There's very little of this film that would have been computer generated, so at least you're dealing with practical effects that probably tend to age better.
Yeah, I was super young movie nerd into special effects and how they were done. To me, of my teen years, the most important special effects movie that ever came out was Roger Rabbit. I saw Roger Rabbit 13 times in the theater.
Jesus.
Wow.
I watched every bit of behind the scenes footage I could get my hands on. I was so fascinated with how they did it. It was mind blowing. And, clearly Robert Zemeckis also was fascinated and then devoted his life to only doing things that excited him visually and forgot about storytelling.
Yeah. Big time.
Yeah.
Did he do Castaway?
Yeah, that's him.
He did do Castaway. I think that might be the last real movie he made.
Volleyball. Yeah.
But then he loves the gimmicks, and it was the gimmick of Tom Hanks losing all the weight, and
I mean, the Forrest Gump gimmick too.
And now he's got the new one. What's it called? Here, where it's just the camera's in one spot, and I'm like, wait a minute. So you just set a camera up, and it's a whole lifetime with a camera set. So you made a play? It's a play.
Made a play.
The trailer. Oh,
with
God.
CGI.
Yes, made a CGI play. That's all this is.
Yeah, let's not waste too much time on that.
No. That is not evergreen content.
Look, there was a time where Robert Zemeckis was a hero, and how our heroes have fallen. Yes.
He's made perfect movies.
Yes.
Back to the Future is perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Do you have any memories about Dreamscape that stick out to you?
Mainly the Snake Man.
Okay.
The Snake Man is a huge thing, and that I remember his transformation from man into Snake Man. I remember a part with the Snake Man in an elevator. You know what? I'm realizing also that I was about to start talking about some other stuff, but I think I'm also combining it with the Snake Man is not in this movie, but I'm also combining it with the movie Brainstorm. That had Natalie Wood and I believe Christopher Walken.
We've done that. That's in the can.
Oh yeah, that's coming. Yeah. So I think
that was
I'm
the first
combining
one for
some
season
stuff
2 that we recorded. So
yeah, I'll be interested to revisit that one too.
But what do you think you're confusing the part from?
I think there was like sex scene-y stuff.
Okay.
Is there that in Brainstorm? Because that's about recording memories and stuff, right? Like early Strange Days stuff. So I may be combining that. Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing super salacious or anything, but yes, there is.
It seems to me that there's probably that in Dreamscape, because how would you make a movie about entering people's dreams without that happening?
Wouldn't be very Freudian.
No. But I can't remember if I knew Kate Capshaw already from Temple of Doom. I must have, because that was her first big movie.
Yeah.
So I must have been excited that she was in this, even though I hated her in Temple of Doom.
Temple of Doom 83 or 84?
84. Yeah, so this might have been around the same time.
I think the release date is before this, because this was August of 84.
So it would have been part of the
Summer of Capshaw.
Summer of Capshaw. It was Dreamscape and Temple of Doom and maybe Space Camp. But I think Kate Capshaw got the Spielberg bump and was in a bunch of stuff, and then they were like,
double entendre intended here.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we didn't see a lot of her after that.
I guess we didn't need to, huh?
He basically just kind of Frank Sinatra her career.
Yep.
Like with Mia Farrow.
So what expectations do you have for your return to Dreamscape?
I have hopes and expectations. My hope is that it is a forgotten gem. My hope is that I feel just as kind of goofy excited about it as I was as a kid. My expectation is probably the opposite of that.
Do you think that's a defense mechanism, or do you think that's grounded in...
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, sure, I bet there will be a little bit of like internal embarrassment that I liked this so much when I was a kid, but also it wouldn't be the first time.
Sure.
You should not think of Josh and I as the two kids on BMXs who show up at your house and you put this on. Like, we are down for whatever.
Yeah, the movies that we have chosen from fucking lists.
Yeah.
We have run the gamut.
Yes. And they're not always movies that we're looking forward to watching.
Sure. Have either of you seen it?
I don't think so, but it's possible. I did, like, on TV in 1989, and I have no recollection of it.
Sometimes Josh will start something, and it'll...
Oh, I've seen this.
Trigger a memory, and it will be like... I can tell you emphatically, I'm zero awareness of this. I didn't know it was a movie. I didn't know it was two words you could put together. I have no frame of reference other than I know that the three actors with Kate Capshaw that you're talking about, that's about it. I don't know of this. So,
yeah, I mean, I definitely have been in the boat of like, oh, wait, I've seen this, 20 minutes into a movie. I usually have a pretty good memory about it, but then not too long ago, Sean and my mutual friend Jason Rouse swore up and down to me that I saw Martin Scorsese's Hugo with him in the theater, and I could not tell you anything about that movie, and I swear that I have not seen it. And then he asked our friend Ian Barry, who was with him, if I was also there, and he's like, yeah, 100%. Yeah, Ted was sitting right next to us. And I don't have any recollection of going to the theater. I don't have any recollection of any single detail outside of the trailer of that movie. And I have yet to go back because I'm kind of afraid to watch it and realize that, like, oh no, I have seen this. It's also quite possible that we saw it late and I just slept through it.
Could be that, or it could be like you had sunstroke and just blacked out 3 hours. Something happened.
Or I'm having a real problem. I'm 52. Things start up.
I mean, when you're like us and you've seen, and I'm not exaggerating because I'm on Letterboxd, I know how many movies I've seen roughly. I've seen over 6,000 fucking movies.
Yeah.
Like, it stands to reason I'll have forgotten some of them.
100%.
I have started Charles Bronson movies and gotten 30 minutes into them before I realized, oh fuck, I've seen this and I saw it like 3 years ago. Like, not even that long ago, and I've completely blanked it.
Right. Yeah, Charles Bronson would be so ashamed.
I mean,
it was late. It was 10 to midnight.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
That's a great one. Isn't that a canon? I believe that's a canon.
Yeah. It's J. Lee Thompson.
Yeah.
In your defense, it's not like he's done just a couple of movies. I mean, Bronson churned out content,
and I've seen a fuck ton of them.
Yeah.
He didn't exactly pull a John Cazale and just left us with 5.
Yeah, well, another part of my history is in the early 90s. Through college, I was like almost always working at a video store. Usually the big ones. I worked at Blockbuster, and then I worked for many years managing Hollywood Videos.
So that's what happened to him.
During that, yes, right. During that time, free rentals. Like every night I went home with 3 movies and often would stay up till 4 a.m. watching them and sleep in all day, bring them back, skip school.
Yeah.
So that upped my game. And at that point, pre-internet, I remember we had the giant encyclopedia book in the store listed by actor, basically IMDb on paper. And I remember going through all the Pacinos and all the De Niros and, seeing all the old stuff that was available. And if it wasn't available, I would order it for us to rent it. So I got a much better education at those video stores than I did at Portland State University. Dog shit.
Did you get a little endorphin that would fire, Ted, when somebody would come up to the counter with, say, Dreamscape or one of the other movies of your youth? Was there any kind of register of oh, okay,
Oh yeah, yeah, and I mean, half the joy of working at those places, the joy that was to be had, was recommending these weird old movies that my dad showed me. And it's hard to remember, but now Evil Dead 2 was a revered classic. At that time, it was not. No one knew what the hell that movie was.
Oh, right.
And, that would be oh my God, you got to see this. You got to, I had a whole list of movies. The Stepfather was one of those, holy shit, you haven't seen The Stepfather? Come with me. And actually, I worked at the Beaverton Blockbuster, the first one in Beaverton. Worked there for a couple of years, and it was right down the street from Kevin Duckworth's house.
Nice.
And he would come in, and
basketball player.
Yes, 0-0.
For the Blazers. But he would come in, and I became his guy. He would come in and ask for me because he liked the weird movies I would recommend for him.
Did you recommend that he watch Dreamscape?
I don't know if I got around to Dreamscape.
Was Dreamscape flying off the shelves there?
In 1991, it was not. It was not.
It wasn't the most popular catalog rental.
It wasn't. It wasn't. No.
Do you remember anything that you recommended to Kevin Duckworth? Does anything stick out?
I'm sure I probably recommended The Stepfather. That was a big one.
Okay.
The Stepfather was one that nobody had seen. Let me think. What were my movies? 3 O'Clock High was a big one that no one saw.
One of our guests, Brian Mann, loves 3 O'Clock High too.
Yeah, that would have been on my list, except I've seen it. Yeah.
He hadn't seen it, and he was hoping we'd choose that one, and I refused to.
It's so good.
I didn't want to make him happy.
So good. Yeah. That movie, Phil Joannou, which is a weird person to have directed that movie. Is that how you say his name? Junou, Janu. The guy who made, was it State of Grace? He was a hot shot in the late 80s for a short time. And he made that weird little comedy, which is so fantastic. What's another one? Boy, I'd have to sit down and make a list. I don't know off the top of my head. Yeah. But I definitely had a list, and I was always fighting for, we had a constantly rotating series of managers that would come in, some that were game for having the employee shelf and some that weren't. And so all of us there were all super nerds and would, try and outdo each other with obscure shit on our shelf. Great fun.
Last question before we wrap this up. Do you think that you're going to like Dreamscape now?
I think that I'm going to have a fun time watching it.
Okay.
Period.
I think that it's going to be garbage.
Well, I look forward to finding out how this plays to your the film, which is very hazy, but or more to your hope that it's good.
I will. Okay, let me tell you a story. This is an embarrassing story, but this gives you an idea of what I would get excited about when I was a kid. Mm. Again, I know this is embarrassing. So I was a big comic book kid. And yes, there had been movies and TV shows made about DC characters, but very few made about Marvel characters outside of the Spider-Man TV movies and the Hulk TV show and the shitty Captain America stuff that we don't talk about. So in 1986, I believe, George Lucas announced that he was making a Marvel movie.
Sure was.
The first big budget Marvel movie. It was called Howard the Duck. And I went and saw it at the Westgate Theater on the big screen with my friend Seth. We saw all the big movies on opening day. And I was so fucking excited about that movie. They could have presented nope, they did. They presented dog shit, and I was still extremely excited that a Marvel movie was made, that a comic book movie made it to the screen, because I had my Howard the Duck comics. And went home. My dad came home from work, and I was like, saw Howard the Duck. It's fucking great. Let's go. We gathered up the whole family. My mom, my brother, my dad, and me. And we headed down to Westgate. I saw Howard the Duck twice on opening day.
Wow.
When we got out of Howard the Duck, my dad was not pleased with me. And so when I say that I got excited about Dreamscape when I saw it as a kid, I got excited about a lot of things.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your Howard the Duck experience is tainting your expectation of going back to Dreamscape?
Oh, it makes me doubt everything that I enjoyed in the 80s.
Sure.
But I have seen, like, the list that I gave you guys, it was a hard list to make because most of the movies that were beloved to me as a kid, I've seen 1,000 times and still watch regularly. These were ones that have just, for one reason or another, have fallen off of that rotation. Stuff like The Stepfather and this. I have fond memories of watching this.
Yeah.
Whether it's good or not is a whole different conversation. And we will have that soon.
Yeah. We're off to meet the Snake Man.
Yeah.
That's right.
Snake Man.
Snake Man.
So where can people find you, Ted, before we say goodbye?
Well, I mean, if you want to, I'm just at Ted Douglas on Instagram.
That's 2 S's, right?
2 S's. I have a Ted Douglas comedian Facebook page that I haven't put anything on in a long time. I think that's probably it. Google me. You'll find me.
Are you on Letterboxd or anything?
I am on Letterboxd, but no one ever looks at it, and I don't write a lot of reviews. I just basically use it to clock what I've been watching. I've only been doing that for about a year.
Okay.
But every once in a while, I'll write something on there. I was an honest-to-God movie critic for a number of years on a different radio program than my old radio show. Well, and on that old radio show. But I don't know that you could find those anywhere, so that's not interesting. I don't know. I'm just a guy.
Those are all microfiche.
Yeah.
Yes, they're all microfiche.
They can go to the Portland Public Library and listen to them, probably.
Yeah. Actually, I think Daria, Mitch, and Ted archive, I believe there is, somebody collected up all of our old podcast versions of the show and posted it after we got fired.
Okay.
So there's like 10 years worth of stuff on there. So you might find something, but why would you? I'm just a guy. Just a guy here to talk about Dreamscape.
Yeah, it's
It's
sad when we find a weird way to boil our lives down to like one thing. It's like, oh, cool, it's this.
Dreamscape.
My fucking cross to bear is going to be SVU. I'm going to be forever fucking linked to that goddamn show.
Well, sure. But at least, Munch by Benson has a nice SEO,
It does. Anyway. I look forward to watching this. I look forward to seeing how... I mean, I don't have any relationship to this movie, so I'm very curious as to how it plays now.
Well, I do regularly show my kids. I have a 16-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son, and they are huge movie buffs because I have built them that way. And I do on Instagram, there's a Baby's First Movies.
Okay.
Is a thing where I log everything I've shown them, and I just saw that we're approaching 500 movies. We started, I think, during or just before the pandemic. Okay. But I will have them watch this with me.
Nice.
So we'll get a current teenager opinion on what this is.
Dad?
Oh, they've seen worse. There's been stuff they've bailed on, and quite famously in our family, we made it through Phantom Menace. Like we watched the original trilogy, we made it through Phantom Menace, and they're like, it was all right. And then we started watching Clone Wars, and about 20 minutes in, my youngest goes like, "What is even happening? What is this? I hate this." And we stopped, and they haven't finished any more Star Wars since then. Because they were just, it was like, hey, George Lucas, your whole "this is for kids" bullshit. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
This is for you and you only.
Ugh.
Anyway.
Yeah, never mind.
We could do another hour.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
Well, when we next talk to you, Ted, we'll have all been dreamscaped.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, this is just it's a void for me, so.
Let's go.
Who knows?
Let's see.
Sean, are you going to manscape before you dreamscape?
Maybe during.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how the Snake Man looks.
Just in case those girls are in the corner.
Gotta be ready. You never know.
Always be waxing.
Oh. My mind, it was like, just face up stage, just face up stage. Just don't turn.
All right. Well, we'll see you all next week. Thanks, Ted.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Ted.
guys.
All right.
This was awesome.
You've just listened to another installment of the Unkind Rewind podcast, mining and potentially ruining your childhood for content, one film at a time. Unkind Rewind is a Munchcast production and can be ingested wherever you listen to podcasts and on the Unkind Rewind YouTube channel. Music for this and every other episode of Unkind Rewind was composed by Divorcio Suave. Rate, review, like, and subscribe to Unkind Rewind on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and Good Pods. Links to all our social media accounts are in our show notes, but you'll find us as at Unkind Rewind Pod on nearly every social media platform, all of which are available at our website, unkindrewind.com. If you have a question, concern, complaint, or feedback, you can email the podcast at unkindrewindpod@gmail.com or call into our call-in line, area code 507-479-6440, and leave a message that can be played on air. Fans should join the Munchcast Discord to discuss this or any other episode of the Unkind Rewind with like-minded people. This dialogue may just make it into a future episode of the pod. The Unkind Rewind Patreon will be coming soon, so start squirreling that pocket change away. Thank you for listening to another Unkind Rewind.